What's up, guys? Welcome to the Meaning Of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we talk about your favorite directors and the deeper meaning within their films. And joining us today, we have a very special guest to talk about Tim Burton.
He will be joining us later.
It will be Frank Lucatuorto. Frank, the editor from Collider. He is known for all his editing adventures here on the Collider
the
movie
unsung
channel.
hero of Collider Video.
The unsung hero of Collider. Without him, Collider would be nothing. But here to talk about Tim Burton, we have a mega Tim Burton fan. I'm honestly genuinely excited to talk to you about Tim Burton because
I'm excited too.
We need a Tim Burton fan. You're a fan as well. I grew up with Tim Burton. I feel like you and I are from the same generation, where like we're growing up in the '90s with all these Tim Burton movies. So I feel like he inspired a lot of people.
Yeah, but you hate him, Ace.
I don't hate him. No, not at all. I'm just not a Tim Burton fan.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
So we're going to get into it, is what you're saying, Ace. We're going to get into it.
All right, I hate him.
My
It's
notes
fine.
are out. Starting over.
But either way, man, thank you so much for joining us, man. We
thanks for
appreciate you having
me.
you.
I've never been so nervous in my life, but
No need to be nervous.
No need to be, man.
No need
It's
to
only
be.
going to be about 200 people watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple thousand on iTunes. I don't know. I'm not sure.
But the reason why we're doing this, guys, is because Tim Burton has a new movie in theaters now.
Dumbo.
It is Disney's Dumbo. He is doing a live-action version of Dumbo that came out and currently sitting at a 48% on Rotten Tomatoes, which means that it's pretty split. I've seen on Twitter, people literally say, amazing, love this movie, it's incredible. And I've seen the other side of the spectrum say, it wasn't for me, I didn't like it, didn't care for it, this was weird. Literally, like one tweet after another. It really is one of those movies that half the audience liked it, half the audience didn't like it. What about you, Frank?
well, what do you guys think?
Well, I mean...
All right, let me put this podcast on my back. And I loved it. I have not been happy with Tim Burton in like over a decade. Like just disappointment. It's felt like he is just like cashing in paychecks. Like the spark is gone. I thought I was never gonna sit in a theater and see a Tim Burton film on this screen and like get that feeling again. And I got it with this one.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, like it's a kids movie, and it's a Tim Burton kids movie, and so like I think that a lot of the people that aren't liking it are going in expecting like Beetlejuice or something, and it's not that.
Yeah,
Right.
it's still Disney.
Yeah,
Right.
And I think that that's I think that that's when Tim Burton does his best work, and we can like kind of talk about that later as well. But when he's got constraints, when
Right.
he is like put in a box and it's like work within this box, then that's when he does his best work. Whereas like the period that I'm not a fan of his movies of, it's when he was just given free reign and it's like, okay, go do whatever. And then we get Alice in Wonderland and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Whereas this, it feels like a Disney movie, and it also kind of feels like he's like taking shots at Disney like within the movie.
Right.
Interesting.
I heard it's very like anti-capitalist kind of themes in that movie, right?
Yeah, because it feels like, yeah, he was kind of like put on a leash by Disney to like make this, retelling of our classic, and he kind of like fought him a little.
Do you feel, what do you feel the tone is? Do you feel like it's a very Tim Burton-y tone?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got a Tim Burton tone because it's not about the elephant, and maybe that's why some people, I don't know why people don't like this movie, but it's about a father who can't connect to his kids, and that's another thing that Tim Burton does so well is like isolation and not being able to connect to people. I think that's the theme of like some of his best movies, and that's what this movie was about to
That's
me.
great, man.
Yeah,
How was CG Dumbo?
Looks fake, but it wasn't like a.
It wasn't like
Jungle
Alice in
Book.
Wonderland. Oh,
Yeah.
Jungle Book.
Well,
Oh,
I'm saying
okay.
like Jungle Book, like those animals looked like
Realistic.
real. This one, it looks like a fake
Cartoon.
elephant. Yeah, but that's the other thing with like Tim Burton stuff is his effects have always looked corny as hell. Like
Yeah.
go back to-
Intentionally.
yeah, and like you go back to like Beetlejuice and like Pee-wee's Big Adventure, even the stuff at the beginning with like the stop motion mixed with live action, it looks corny, but you get sucked into the story, so you don't care. So with this, I got sucked into the story, and it's like, yeah, it's a CG elephant, but I care about it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tim Burton's animation background really like plays a hand into that too, like because the whole idea of animation is like making a character exaggerated a little bit, you know. So, but it's cool that he started out in animation. He went to school for animation, and then now he's directing a live action version of one of the films that inspired him to get into filmmaking in the first place.
That's a good point. But one of the most famous animated movies.
Yeah,
with
but
Dumbo.
This has a higher Rotten Tomatoes score than Alice in Wonderland. You think there's no way this is worse than Alice in Wonderland?
Oh no, Alice in Wonderland.
I mean, it's a lower score. Yeah.
The one redeeming part of Alice in Wonderland was Anne Hathaway to me. I thought she was like phenomenal in that movie. I fell in love with her. Mm-hmm. The rest of that movie is just like garbage.
Yeah.
Garbage.
Now I gotta ask you about my future wife, Eva Green. How was she in the movie? Oh, are we gonna fight, Frank? Are we fighting, Frank? I said my future wife.
See, I have never fallen in love so hard as in Dumbo. She is so good in this movie.
Great.
She's perfect.
Yes.
Great. She's my favorite Bond girl. She's my girl, RB3.
Then you definitely need to see Dumbo. 'Cause she's amazing.
One thing I definitely want to say is when people think, especially now, right? Because beginning of his career, we were still trying to figure out what exactly he was. But now, when people say a Tim Burton movie, people essentially know what that means when you go into it. I just kind of want to define it based on what you think, RB3, and based on what you think, Frank. If someone would ask you, what is a Tim Burton movie, or what makes a Tim Burton movie, how would you answer that question? I'll start with you, RB3.
What makes a Tim Burton movie? That's a great question. I mean, for me, I think when I think Tim Burton, I think style, right? I mean, I think that's what everybody jumps to, of course. I mean, his aesthetic, where he takes from, it's a mixture of a lot of different, you know, he takes a lot from, like, the German expressionism, you know, of, like,
I saw an interview he did once where he claimed to have never seen The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Really?
And I almost, like, flipped whatever table I was sitting at.
That's crazy. I don't...
Because Edward Scissorhands, the imagery is, like, exactly...
Similar, yeah. So either his, like, production designers or whatever, maybe that's the case. But, like, he, you know, but at least if he hasn't seen that, at least he embraces that aesthetic a lot. He embraces a lot of the British, like, the Hammer horror, you know, kind of films, especially some of his later films like Sweeney Todd and some of his other ones, Sleepy Hollow. And then there's also a lot of like I said, animation. Like, it's very clear he's inspired by animation just by the way his characters move. The physical comedy is very akin to the, like, bounce and stretch of animated characters. And I think that's something really cool. I think that really sets his aesthetic apart from everything else. But then at the heart of his movies, aesthetic aside, it always comes down to humanizing the outsider, right? That's all it comes down to.
The reject.
Yeah. Or in some cases, maybe a reject to society, but and familiar and amongst family, along with other outsiders too. So that's just what I take from his movies personally. But I don't know. What about you, Frank?
That you summed it up so well. Yeah, to me, a Tim Burton movie, when it's working, is it's a fairy tale, basically. He tells these stories that are set in our world, but with slight changes. You know, that's when I'm talking about, like, when he works within a box, where it's not just like, you know, go do whatever. When he's got our world, but something weird about it, you know, like a man with scissors for hands, or ghosts, you know, being there, and that's I get it's a fairy tale with the aesthetic. I think it is very hard to distinguish him from the aesthetic, and that's like one of the big complaints I have with the second half of his career, is that at the beginning, everybody said he's all style, no substance. And I don't think that was the case at the beginning.
Oh, no.
And then around like 2003, 2004, I feel like he switched to become mostly style and no substance. And it felt like a parody of himself.
Right.
But Dumbo to me was like a
was a
switchback.
comeback, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the word obviously that I think of, and it's a very generic word to think of, but whimsical,
Whimsical,
I guess, for lack of a better word.
The Danny Elfman score also,
That's true.
this frequent collaborator, I think also helps with that a lot.
Yeah.
I think the music really adds to that.
He's got. I mean, it's like a whole team. Like we talk about Tim Burton, but it's really the Tim Burton team. It's
Right.
like Colleen Atwood doing his costumes,
Yes.
and Danny Elfman doing the music, and like it's that like crew has just created this aesthetic now that we.
Yeah, I do feel like you said aesthetic aside, but it's one of those things where like that's the biggest thing you see in a Tim Burton movie is production design, costumes, visual effects, special effects that are real special effects that you can actually see the texture of
early on
of a creature, of a person.
Before he found a computer.
Besides Alice in Wonderland, we keep saying Alice in Wonderland, but I think we all agree on that movie.
And
I did
I
not
love like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in with that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alice in
The
Wonderland.
second Alice.
No, I mean, Alice in Wonderland is actually a little bit of a guilty pleasure for me.
Oh, you like it? Huh?
Only because I saw that.
But you saw it when you were like 5.
I saw when I was at least like 13 when that came out.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
But it was just like, one of those.
Like in college or
but
something.
I'm one of those cats, like, if it's just CGI and it's 3D, like, I'm there
Yeah.
for it, especially back then,
Yeah.
So, but as a movie, no, it's super terrible.
Well, something that I kind of want to bring in about is that when I worked at a production company with a bunch of film nerds and people like us right here, there's plenty of Tim Burton fans, and there's something now that I feel like Tim Burton is always going to be associated, similar to like a Lady Gaga with her Little Monsters, is the Tim Burton fans. So I kind of want to turn the table and ask what exactly makes a Tim Burton fan, and what do they connect to when it comes to Tim Burton? If that does that make sense of the question?
Right. I mean, Frank would probably be the better one to answer this.
But since you are literally wearing a Nightmare Before Christmas, I'm sorry, and then all this, you literally have a flag on it.
How much money have you dropped at Hot Topic, Frank?
I was gonna say I walked into a Hot Topic one time and it was like Tim Burton, and that's how I discovered him.
It's like, whoa, they like him too. It's like an entire generation of people. I will include myself in that because, like I said, I mean, I think we're a similar age, but that's 90s and Tim Burton and Beetlejuice and Batman and like all this stuff that kind of like this dark tint. Black on black, like I would wear all black. Like this is stuff that you associate with someone who grew up on Tim Burton movies.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember not loving him. It's like I was born in '89, so like I remember getting the VHS copy of Nightmare Before Christmas for Christmas one year, and like he's just always I've always connected with him. And then like as I've gotten older, that's when you like really start like getting the meaning behind a lot of his films, and like you said, like I think somebody who the message in a lot of his films is that like it's even if you feel like an outsider, there's still a place for you in this world, even if it's not like what you might want. Like Edward Scissorhands ends with him, spoiler alert, up on the mountain alone by himself, but at least he's like found happiness inside of him. Beetlejuice, it ends with the ghosts are still, they're still ghosts, they're still haunting this house, but they've made peace with the people living there. It's about like being okay with being an outsider. And so I think that's like what the Tim Burton fan latches onto is like there's the like, yeah, we like to shop at Hot Topic, but there's something there that you can connect to.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of his films are very, they kind of beautifully interweave that into a lot of real world marginalized groups. I mean, I think a lot about Ed Wood, and Ed Wood is a movie all about the filmmaker Ed Wood, who him in of himself was a cross-dresser and hung out with a community of, a couple of people who wanted to transition to another gender, or a lot of, so it's a lot of his films, and then even something like what was this other film I watched recently? But even something like Sweeney Todd, that's what I meant to say. Even something like Sweeney Todd is about somebody trying to reassimilate into society. So it's just like, it's about the people. It's about, a lot of times his films are about the outsiders, but also applies to people like an ex-prisoner, like a person who, like somebody like Ed Wood, who is kind of sexually fluent. So it's I think a lot of his movies resonate with a lot of people in a lot of different ways. You know.
And Dumbo, sorry,
No, go
I was
ahead.
gonna- Dumbo actually like is really about that as well because it's about Colin Farrell's character just comes back from World War One. And he lost an arm and he doesn't know his children anymore, and so it's about him trying to like get back into that groove of like a normal life after the war.
Right.
Yeah, it's a telling factor considering he put so much of his heart and so much of his personal
Right.
feelings inside a movie. It's almost
Very
a glimpse.
personal,
It
yeah.
is. It is. It's almost a glimpse inside his mind, which is always a curious thing because you're like, man, this guy's been through some stuff, I guess. If he's making all these movies about outsiders trying to fit into society or just not fitting into society in any way, which is kind of the general consensus that we're agreeing that Tim Burton puts in each and every one of his movies, which is absolutely fascinating because I think that's kind of what we need when it comes to filmmakers, and he's one of those people who chose to do that so he could connect to, young people, children, not necessarily children, but young people who do feel like they're not associating with other people and they're not making as much friends as everyone else and they feel a little bit disconnected from society, and that's the kind of generation and kind of people that I grew up with that I can connect to a Tim Burton movie because of that. Even in something like Batman, you could feel that too. Like Batman's an outsider, absolutely. Go ahead.
What are your guys' thoughts on Batman '89? Because I have very strong opinions on this.
Yeah,
I
we
know
could just jump
RB3
into
does
it.
too.
Yeah, we
RB3,
could jump
let's do
into
it.
it.
Let's start with Batman
I
'89.
have strong opinions on '89. What do
you
you?
told
All right,
me.
first of all, what do you think I think of that movie?
You said you hate that movie.
When did I say that? Wait a minute. I never said that. Well, I will say
All
that.
right, then tell me what you think.
I love that movie. I think it's really great. I think it's actually really fun.
I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah, I was
now.
gonna say did I ever say that?
Didn't you say that?
I don't know.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I probably, I probably did say, and I kind of do believe this. It's probably the best worst movie probably ever. Personally, I think.
Really?
There's a lot of
Yo.
there's just a lot of like really funny moments that kind of
Sure.
make no sense.
It is the worst Batman movie. Hate it.
Tell that
Hate
to
Batman
Michael
'89.
Keaton.
Oh wow.
Well, it's not, and I don't think it's his fault, and
Yeah.
I don't even
Yeah.
think it's Tim Burton's fault as
Yeah.
much. Like it's in 1989, they weren't ready to make
Right.
But
Batman.
that thing was
He-
huge, man. Like when that movie came out, it was a phenomenon. Like
Yeah.
I know that's the year
And
you were
it's-
born, but
well,
it's
yeah.
still like I remember, and that's like a couple of years after I was born. I mean, before I was born, but it was like this thing was everywhere.
And maybe it's something different where it's like if you saw it as a kid and like you're able to look past a lot of the stuff, but it's so corny.
It's campy. It's the camp. It's super. They were trying to make Adam West into a
Yeah.
live action movie. That's what they were trying to do.
But then, like on the flip side, Batman Returns is one of my favorite Batman movies.
love Batman
because it's
Returns.
not
Yes.
a Batman movie, and it's like that. Like Tim Burton didn't get Batman, and it's like it's interesting because like Batman is an outsider, like you said. But I feel like he didn't connect with that character. Like Michael Keaton Batman, I don't.
You
There's
want to
no-
get nuts? Let's get nuts.
yeah, it's like there's nothing that it's Adam West mixed with like let's just put this on the screen. Whereas like he connected to Catwoman and
Yeah,
Penguin, and so
yeah.
Batman Returns, Batman's in it for all of like 10 minutes.
5 minutes. Yeah.
But that movie's so good because he like those are characters he can connect with.
Right.
Like there's like a machoism about Batman that didn't mesh with his like sensibilities.
I think you could see that. Like he tried really hard. Like ninjas came out of nowhere to fight in that one scene. Like that to me was when I saw the movie, I was like, this is insane. Like did he get away with this? And then the ninjas. There's also that one scene where I think he was it might have been when he was fighting one of the ninjas or fighting somewhere else. They're just random like flashes out of nowhere, but nobody was taking pictures. It was just random like flashes. Like you know what I mean? It's just so weird. There's just so many weird moments in that movie.
the Prince soundtrack.
Yeah, the Prince. Yeah, the dancing with the Joker. Jack Nicholson though, pretty good in this
Really?
movie. I think he's pretty good as
Interesting.
a Joker interpretation. But
You know
otherwise, no.
what I think
But-
stands out in the Batman movies, the Tim Burton Batman movies, that actually becomes a character, and a very weird character is Gotham. Gotham is
Yes.
like this is
yeah,
like
that's the
not-
most Tim Burton-y part of it.
It's so Tim Burton. It was like I was like, this isn't. This is like a weird like whimsy Gotham.
Well, it's probably
where like buildings are like popping out.
Yeah, it's
and
this weird like art decor.
Yeah,
like,
Well,
whatever.
it feels very comic booky. It feels very comic booky in that way. Whereas Nolan's movies go out of their way to make you feel like Gotham's like a real place.
Yeah.
This one goes out of your way to make you feel
like what is that building and who lives there?
Yeah.
He nailed the atmosphere of that one, and he nailed the villains
And the fog machines.
Yeah,
The fog, the fog,
the fog machines, bro. All those things were pumping.
Still the best Batman theme, like the music of the.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Danny Elfman score, yeah.
And we can't talk about it without talking about the Batmobile in both movies. Which one do you guys prefer? Obviously,
are they the same?
Oh, they are the same. Yeah.
I don't know if they.
But it's still a classic design.
I like that. Actually, I think Nolan's one is like too serious. You know what I mean? Like
I love the Nolan.
It's almost too like
Tumblr?
Yeah, it's like too jagged. I don't know. I don't really like it. Do you like?
What do you think about the Tim Burton's Batman-mobile?
It's all right. I mean, it just falls into the. I have a hard time connecting to that movie because it feels so fake and like
sure.
like that Batmobile's not making turns. You know?
Yeah. You know which one I liked? That was like a good in between. Was the Ben Affleck Batmobile? That was like a good in between of like the super serious one.
I agree with
like
you.
The cartoony one.
Yeah.
I still agree with you though, Frank. I think like for me, I laugh more at the first Batman than I do like actually appreciate it. But the second one I actually do value as like a true film because like you're right. Literally, like I watched this movie for the first time I think when I was a sophomore in high school. And like I went in there wholly expecting to see a full like Batman sequel. It was so weird to me seeing the first hour of this movie, and Batman's literally only in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
literally only in 5 minutes of the first hour. When it's all about, like you said, Penguin. It's all about Catwoman, and he has the greatest time. I feel like Michelle Pfeiffer, Catwoman. The scene where she comes home after being distraught and she makes that transformation is one of the most powerful like pieces of acting I feel like just ever, you know. And yeah, I mean she does a great job, and even Danny DeVito as the Penguin, you see like his plight, you see what he's going through.
Yeah.
He kind of has that Jesus of Nazareth moment when like he gets shipped away in the little what was that crate down the lake or whatever, and he gets picked up by this family.
Yeah, he makes you sympathize with them.
Yeah,
and I think
right.
maybe that's where I don't connect with Batman and his movies. Is that like, yeah, we see him as a kid and we see his parents get shot, but you never like. I never feel for Batman at all. It's never like, you know, oh, keep going.
Right.
You know, whereas like Christian Bale Batman, like you feel for him.
Right.
You know?
I think a big part of that is, you know, in the original Batman, we never see like the rise of Batman. We never see that coming.
Yeah,
he's
just
hero.
Batman all of a sudden.
Yeah, it just kind of happens, you know. Whereas the Nolan one, where Batman begins, you spend like a full hour, hour and a half, like seeing him grow, fight, you know, overcome his fears. We never really see him address any of his like fears in this movie. So
something that Tim Burton continually does in all his movies is we have to talk about his relationship with horror. And how he has horror elements in almost all his movies, even if they're kids movies. There's still some horrific or just terrifying stuff in all his movies, whether it be design, whether it be creature design or costume design, whatever it is. It has elements inside of it. And I just remember watching Batman Returns. And Danny DeVito's Penguin,
when he eats the fish.
Oh my God, it was horrifying. As like I forget how old I was when I saw it, like 6, 7, however old I was like, oh my God, this is a horror movie.
And that's what people blame for the next Batman,
Batman
George
Forever.
Clooney.
Oh, yes.
Like, because Tim Burton made such a weird horror movie that like they couldn't sell McDonald's toys, and so they decided to like, all right, scrap that. We're going totally
Full
the other
kids,
direction.
Yeah, and I mean, I just, feel like every single one of them have some sort of terrifying element. But the Penguin is scary.
Yeah,
I don't know how you felt about that, but to me, he's scary to me.
I mean, even like you talk about kids movies like Pee-wee's Big Adventure, his first one, like there's some scary parts in like Large Marge. Terrifying.
Yeah. But see, the way he shoots it, he uses those like very like short camera lenses or whatever, and then like it's very much in your face, so it like feels like even like more visceral, you know.
My God, let's do it. Let's go back to Tim Burton's first film. It's Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I love this movie. I love it so much.
Let's hear it, Frank.
It's a weird thing where it's not quite a Tim Burton movie. Like it's a Pee-wee movie. You could tell that he like stepped into this, and there's like a few parts where you start to see his like style come through. Like there's a couple dream sequences that have the slanted hallways and like kind of horror going on. But I think that was like the perfect place for him to start and like deal with those constraints of like, you can't just make your movie. You have to step into this world of Pee-wee and make, you know, but it worked out perfectly because it's a weird movie about this man-child who like doesn't have any real connections and he's like off in his own crazy fantasy world.
I love it. And I feel like those dream sequences you're talking about in particular, they kind of like, to me, they felt heavily influenced from that like old Hitchcock movie Suspicion, where like Salvador Dali like designed all the dream sequences and they're like super like weird and trippy, but it just comes out of nowhere. And I feel like that's a big part of what Pee-wee's thing is. Like you're right, it does have a brain to maintain, but then Tim Burton style oddly like weirdly can like slip into that because it's so much of a kid, like a man-child's perspective, and to some extent some of what some of Burton's style comes from like child-based, kind of imagination and whimsy and creativity. So it kind of like was, like you said, it was like a perfect mixture.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, this movie was enormous. It was huge. Yeah. It was everywhere. I remember watching this movie multiple times as a kid. And something I want to bring up to you guys, and I might be reaching, and I might be jumping the gun when it comes to certain movies like Edward Scissorhands, which we haven't gotten to yet. But do you think that Tim Burton puts himself in each of his protagonists? Maybe someone like a Pee-wee?
I think with Pee-wee, it's kind of hard because, like, that is a character. I think he had to put himself into the world more. And, like, when you look at, like, the Pee-wee's Big Adventure movie compared to the Pee-wee TV show, compared to the other Pee-wee movies that have come out, his does stand out as having a real specific world to it. So I think he couldn't necessarily influence the character as much, but he was able to influence the world around it. With the rest of his movies, the ones that work, he absolutely is putting himself in.
Yeah, and I kind of jumped the gun because I keep seeing Edward Scissorhands, and I'm like, there's got to be something there where he's like, I'm going to put myself in his movie, and there it is. Nice.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say before you leave Pee-wee's Big Adventure, this does come out. But leave it up. Yeah, it's totally cool. But that was his first project after being fired from Disney after he made Frankenweenie. And Frankenweenie was...
that's right, the short.
Yeah, the short that he did. Frankenweenie was so terrifying. It was a stop-motion animation, as all of his... Like, we see a bunch of his shorts here. They're all from Disney at this point. And
I thought that Frankenweenie was a live-action short.
It might have been... I think it was a live-action short.
Vincent was a stop-motion?
Yeah. Vincent, yeah.
I could be wrong. I think Frankenweenie's a live action.
Oh, okay, yeah, it probably is. But I think it was Disney money,
Yeah.
And then he used Disney money to pay for it, and Disney was just like, we can't have this. Like, it just won't. Like, hey, how we're gonna sell this?
It's crazy. His relationship with Disney you can make a documentary about that.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, so they fired him, and which is really interesting because Disney, before Walt Disney had died, and I don't know what year he died in particular, but the Disney Corporation had always kind of encouraged creativity and imagination, and that's kind of why they wanted to groom people like John Lasseter, like Brad Bird, like Tim Burton. But then once they all graduated from Caltech and once they all started working for Disney, like as animators, they all either got fired or left because they just didn't. They wanted to push the boundaries. Brad Bird wanted to push boundaries. John Lasseter, to some extent, I don't want to talk about him because but he was trying to push boundaries, and Tim Burton was trying to push boundaries, but they all got fired because they
were trying to push boundaries.
I mean, they had Tim Burton filling in the what are they called, go-betweens? When like the animations, like you have the main frames and whatever the frames are called in between. He was doing Fox and the Hound and Black Cauldron, just like line work.
Right.
That's got to be difficult for yeah.
So it's just like but it ultimately works out better in the long run because we have all these talented people, including Burton, who decided to make his step into live action and television and all that stuff. So
and while he was at Disney is where he wrote the original poem for Nightmare Before Christmas, and that's like why Disney owns Nightmare Before Christmas. It's like interesting to think about like if that wasn't a Disney thing, we probably it wouldn't be the big thing it is now. But now that like they change their Haunted Mansion every year into, they can sell stuff at Hot Topic. It's like Disney really benefited from Tim Burton
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
no, absolutely.
Taking over, man.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
actually a big deal with rights and all that, and how they can, you know, like you said, stop creativity or encourage creativity. They have a big hand in that.
Right.
The reason why I moved on to Edward Scissorhands, obviously we'll go back. We're kind of going in this
Right.
order anyways. Is because I feel like this, if you wanted to point at a movie that really nails thematically what Tim Burton is trying to say, I feel like Edward Scissorhands is that movie. Would you agree with that? And if you do, what would you think that the thematic themes of this movie and the messages of this movie is, RB3?
Right. I mean, I think the message is about acceptance, I feel like. You know, a message is about acceptance. It's about, you know, kind of embracing people who are different than yourself, different than, you know, and how, you know, a lot of times people are built in with this fear of the other, the fear of what they don't know or don't understand. And I feel like that's a lot of what the community kind of goes through once they, you know, start seeing, especially with those guys. I don't know if they're like bullies, but those those dudes at the end who are effing with them. It's all of that. It kind of summates into like a commentary about how people how the lack of understanding and the fear of understanding kind of influences people, and how the fear of the other kind of influences people, but how somebody like Edward Scissorhands, you know, he has to find acceptance within himself rather than looking for acceptance among others. So that's just kind of what I take from it. But
Yeah. My favorite movie of all time by
Really?
a large
Yeah.
margin.
Wow.
Nothing even comes close.
wow, yeah,
To me, yeah, I think it's what I get from that is like when I kind of talked about how like his themes are that you can be different and not fit in the way that you think. Like Edward Scissorhands is like, yes, about accepting being different, but in the end, like he ends up alone on top of the mountain. Nobody ends up accepting him. And like I think that the message it's something along the lines of like, you know, you can be different and you might not fit in, but like you have to, like you said, like accept yourself for it. You know, he ends up happy even though he's still, you know, alone.
right,
I think the main theme of this is that you can't love something without hurting it, and that's something that like comes across in like a lot of Tim Burton stuff where it's like he's basically making Frankenstein in a lot of these movies, you know, about like the monster, but the monster's the human one, and Edward Scissorhands is a robot, but he's a machine, but he's the most human one in the whole, you know, that whole neighborhood.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
right.
huge, and we see that in a lot of movies now. We see like inspiration from that.
yeah, no, absolutely. Tim Burton's probably, I feel like he's one of the most influential filmmakers
Yeah,
that we have on.
I kind of want to hear that at the end.
storytelling.
We can
Yeah.
all think of it right now as far as like what creators and what movies do we feel like Tim Burton has to have a hand in as far as inspiring. Something that I definitely want to say though about Edward Scissorhands that we can't leave out of this conversation is the iconic look.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 50% of the work.
Yeah.
The fact that it's such an icon, the hair, obviously the Scissorhands, but his face and the performance of I mean, we have to.
It's him and
I didn't want to bring him up, but we
that's
got to
my
bring
boy.
him up.
Oh,
The
we're bringing him
performance
up.
of Johnny Depp, man. And
Hey.
he nails it. Like he
It's
really
their
does.
first collaboration, and it's like they're one of the duos that like the most iconic duos of, you know, Tim Burton and Johnny Depp. It's like they just got each other right away. Tim Burton, you talk about like putting yourself in the role, like Edward Scissorhands looks like Tim Burton with the crazy hair, and like Johnny Depp was he was like a teen heartthrob on TV, and he was trying to like
21
break
Jump
out.
Street.
21 Jump
Yeah,
Street.
he hated all of that, and like so it was this perfect pairing of like Tim Burton needed somebody to portray his like inner struggles with like being out in the world, and Johnny Depp wanted to step into that like obscure like weird role.
Right.
Yeah,
So it was
and
just like perfect.
that's why I mentioned it before, because I really do feel like Tim puts himself in Edward more than any other character. I really feel like that's what he's putting himself in.
Like you drive around Burbank, because Tim Burton grew up in Burbank, and like the neighborhood in Edward Scissorhands is basically supposed to be Burbank, of these like identical houses, the identical families, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was his childhood, was like growing up loving these like monster movies on TV late at night, but being surrounded by, you know, normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, regardless of anything that's happening right now, Johnny Depp is an amazing actor, man. Like he's he's dope. He's
in
really
the midst
good.
of being vindicated right now.
Oh, there's a push, and I think you're leading the charge, man.
I am.
That's good. Nah, I actually, it's interesting that you kind of mentioned Depp kind of stepping in to a role. You know, a lot of times, you know, with a lot of TV actors, they kind of get stuck into typecast or heartthrob. It was like he was going for the exact opposite. Like, hey,
And he kind of ended up being typecast as that.
Right.
To his detriment. Where
Now he's like the weird whimsy guy.
full of makeup, full of costume and weird stuff. But I mean, I think he loves it. I mean, honestly, I don't think he could be acting for this long and as many off center roles as he does.
Yeah.
But I mean, even in movies outside of Tim Burton, we're talking about like Fear and Loathing, a bunch of films, Donnie Brasco, where he just all plays kind of different characters. But this movie, Jack Sparrow, yeah. But I honestly do feel like this movie is maybe the career defining performance. And I also feel like on Tim Burton's scale, I feel like this is like his magnum opus. I feel like this is generally agreed to be like, if not the best, if people don't say it's like the best Tim Burton movie, at least people would recognize it as the most Tim Burton movie at the very least,
So I think this is my favorite Tim Burton movie, and we can get to it when we get down the list, but I think his best movie is Big Fish.
Ooh, I love Big Fish.
We've got the medium fish
here.
here.
There it is.
But I think that you're right, like, in terms of like the look, like this set up that look for the rest of his career.
How was your experience watching it for the first time? Because I'm assuming that has a big hand, right?
I don't remember
Really?
watching it for the first time.
Interesting.
I can't ever remember not having seen and loved this movie.
That's great. Awesome. Let's move on to something that we can't leave out, man, and that's Beetlejuice. Hey, there he is.
Yeah, baby.
I said it, and he's there. Oh.
Lydia Dietz up here.
Yeah, we got full.
We got props on props.
Yeah. Can we
Dang.
put this?
Let's put it right in the middle.
Yeah.
Right in the middle.
Let's start with this.
We should have had this out.
Yeah, I don't know where is it blocking Frank?
No. It's right there.
I'd be honored to be blocked by Beetlejuice.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
I really hope
go.
that Beetlejuice 2 doesn't happen. I know that you keep hearing that, like, it's going to happen. I really, Tim, if you're watching this, I know you are. Please don't make Beetlejuice.
I love how we start this conversation.
Didn't Kevin Smith write like Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian or some shit? Like,
just leave it. Just leave it alone.
Let's do it, man. Let's talk about it. Out of all the movies, I clearly remember watching this the most as a kid, and I clearly remember it freaking the crap out of me.
It's not like a kid's movie.
No.
But like I feel like a lot of us watched it as kids.
Yeah, and it terrified me as a child. What is it about this movie that so many people love and has made Beetlejuice an iconic character? So iconic, in fact, that if you go to Universal Studios, he's actually a character and the guy who plays him is great at Universal Studios Hollywood. And I was there just a couple days ago, and it's so funny seeing children. I'm saying like 6, 7-year-olds react to him and just go up to him as if it's like, oh my God, mom, look, and it's like, you're 6, bro. Like, how do you know about this movie and about this character? And the fact that he's lived so much through time that in 2019, you still have 7-year-olds at Universal being like, Beetlejuice, I need a picture, mom. And it's like, wow, that's crazy to me. It's baffling.
Yeah. I put a lot of that on Michael Keaton more than Tim. Like, obviously, Tim Burton did a lot for that, but Michael Keaton, like, became this character that, like, he carries that on his back. Yeah.
The mannerisms, the body humor, like, this guy was on a different level when it comes to embodying this character. Yeah, this movie's crazy. Can you break down this movie for me?
I don't know how to break this down. I really didn't see this movie for the first time until my freshman year of college.
Oh wow!
It was Halloween.
Which was like 2 years ago. No,
3 years ago.
Oh,
Ace,
okay.
thank you very much. It was Halloween, and then I didn't have nothing to do, no parties to go to, so I just watched.
I find that hard to believe.
I was at CSUN, man. CSUN's dry up.
Oh, CSUN.
Yeah. But yeah, so then I think it was on Netflix at the time, and checked out this movie. I don't know. I laughed my ass off in this movie. Man. It's so funny. Like, it is crazy funny.
It's funny. Lydia Dietz. I mean, we didn't talk about Winona Ryder and Edward Scissorhands, but she's another just like a perfect blend. to work with him, and like especially this one.
Yeah.
I love Lydia Dietz.
Yeah.
I've used her monologue, "My life is a dark room," one big dark room, on my Tinder profile so many times. Nobody ever gets it.
Oh, bro. There's no way you still haven't found a fellow Burton fan.
That's weird.
I've met plenty of female Burton fans out there. There's plenty.
If you're out there, look for my bio.
Look for my bio.
Yeah, the movie's so good. And like we talk about special effects, like in Dumbo, like Dumbo doesn't look real. You know, when they like stick their hand and do the it obviously doesn't look real, but you're so invested that it works. It's like he created this world that we believe in, so you don't care what the special effects look like.
Right. And I mentioned some of his influences before, being like, B-movie. Talking about like German expressionism and like British horror, but a lot of it comes from those B movies. A lot of it comes from like those 50s and 60s sci-fi movies that do have like the over-the-top visual effects and do have special effects.
Ed Wood movies.
Ed Wood, yeah, exactly, and we're gonna talk about Ed Wood too. But yeah, that's those movies kind of have a big hand into how his aesthetic, is communicated. So
yeah, I mean, there's no way we cannot talk about this movie and talk about those special effects and the practical effects that he uses that are, in my opinion, still absolutely terrifying. I mean, obviously, we did the episode where I talked about The Thing and how I think The Thing is still so scary because of the practical effects. And I always found practical effects to be more terrifying than anything else because I could see the texture. I'm a big texture guy, as weird as that sounds, but I always want to see and reach out into the screen. And if I feel like I can feel that with my hands, it terrifies me. Yeah. I'm like, this is just nasty and scary, and it's like, I can't handle it
and that's what the like Alice in Wonderlands and Charlie and the Chocolate Factories didn't have, is no texture to anything.
It just all felt like a computer.
But yeah, like Beetlejuice, you see it like when she's like putting her hand on the banister and it's the snake going down. It's like a thing. You can like look at it and feel it.
Yeah. Let's get into a little bit of what this movie is trying to communicate to the audience. What do you think that is, RB3? Besides it being, like you said, a fun time with Michael Keaton.
Right. I mean, it's a family story at the end of the day. Alec Baldwin and who's homegirl? Who's the wife? I don't know the actress name, but yeah, I think it's all about family. It's all about discovering love and marriage. And of course, like you said, the Winona Ryder character.
Yeah, she becomes close with her family when at the beginning she's not.
Right. It's that journey of like rediscovering family through like an adventure, like being being trapped by Beetlejuice. So it's just I think overall, I mean that's how I interpret the movie. But I don't know, Frank, do you take?
No,
anything?
I think you like hit it right on the head. Like this, I mean, this is a fun movie. This is one of his most fun. But there's definitely a family thing there.
Do you guys have a favorite moment or scene in this movie, or gag or whatever?
When they're doing the wedding scene at the very end, Lydia, when she's wearing that like red wedding dress, I love the imagery of her in the red wedding dress. Beetlejuice in his like tux, the little alien guy who comes out of the fireplace to marry him. Like that scene is just visually so good.
Yeah, no, me too. I love the scene when they start realizing that they're like actually dead, like that they're ghosts and still like lurking. And I don't know, that whole sequence was just hilarious to me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's plenty of iconic scenes in that. Obviously the dinner table dance.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Everyone goes back to that, but the reason why they go back to it is because it's iconic.
I also love the undead like DMV.
And that's like I watched Beetlejuice again recently, like, and you always forget like how dark it is. Like, there's like a suicide joke right up at the top. And it's like
it's dark humor.
It's like,
it's really like rewatching this for me. That's the biggest thing that I put my finger on is the fact that yes, this is dark humor. That's the best way to define it.
Their caseworkers smoking with like the smoke coming out of her neck, and like the dead football players. It's like it's good. It's dark.
Yeah. It's funny. It's super
Coach,
funny.
I don't think we survived that bus crash.
So good.
Let's move on to a movie that you guys keep bringing up, and you bring it up for a reason, and that's Ed Wood.
Ed Wood, yeah. Now, I mean, this is his most acclaimed movie, I think. It got nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards. And, I think for a Tim Burton film, this is most different because it's actual stories based on a true story. But I also think it's his most, like, I think it's the most him too. I think there's a lot of him in this story. At least like not in terms of like I guess in terms of not in terms of the Ed Wood character in and of himself, because he's a much better filmmaker than like Ed Wood was, but the spirit of filmmaking, the spirit of doing it with your friends and having that community of film with you, I think that's the biggest part I take away from this movie.
And he's kind of like making an homage to like somebody who influenced him growing up.
Right,
you know, like he
right.
grew up on those B movies, so it's a chance to like give something back to, you know, like a nod to like, yeah, this movie's super cheesy and you can laugh at it, but like this guy had so much passion making it. You know, like that's what he's trying to say with that.
Right, and it's very excuse me, it's a very positive interpretation of Ed Wood. I mean, the real Ed Wood himself was an alcoholic who like died. His career ended with him going into pornography and dying on a couch at a party. Like, the real story is very, it's very dark. But the character that he portrays here is so positive, so optimistic. Johnny Depp playing the most unusual Tim Burton part. I feel like whereas most Tim Burton movies is kind of sad and mopey.
But he's great in this movie.
Yeah, he's like smiling ear to ear the entire time. And I love that. I love that it's a movie about somebody who has this much optimism and trying to push his movies forward.
Can you remind me what it was nominated for?
I believe it was nominated. It won 2 Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor for Martin Landau, who played Vera Lugosi, and Best Makeup as well.
Okay. The scene where I think my favorite scene in that movie is when Martin Landau is in the pool, like fighting the octopus.
Yeah,
and it's like so sad, like this old man in there, like fighting this octopus that doesn't have the motor. But that's like the spirit of all of it is, just.
Absolutely. This is out of all the movies that really left an impression on me. Maybe besides Beetlejuice, I would say the one that does it the most. And by impression, I don't necessarily mean positive impression. That's Mars Attacks. We got to talk about Mars Attacks, man.
Oh, man.
What is it about this movie, Frank? What do you think?
It's a tough one because it's not great, and it's kind of like the fact that he made it right after Ed Wood. You know, it's kind of almost like this like supposed to be campy movie, but then like the effects are just so bad that like you have a hard time getting into the camp of it. It's a hit or miss.
Yep. And for you, it is a hit or miss? Which one?
It's a hit in that I have fun watching it.
Sure.
I don't think it's one of his best, but I appreciate what he did for like trying. You know, like Mars Attacks. It was a bubblegum card thing. Like that's where the IP comes from, and like he created the story out of that. Great performances. It's not great.
What about you, RB3?
That's a hard miss for me, man.
Ooh.
It's a hard miss. This is one of those movies I just can't find anything in it for me personally. I mean, I get like it's cheesy as all that stuff. It is what it is.
This movie scarred me, bro.
Yeah.
Like, it scared you?
Oh, it scared the crap out of me.
Did you watch it when you're like a kid or something?
I was like, I went, what year did this movie come out? 96? Yeah, I was like friggin' 7 years old or something, 6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
It terrified me, absolutely terrified me watching this movie as a kid. That's the biggest takeaway that I have from it, and I definitely don't remember having a lot of fun watching it.
Yeah.
But even when it was Sarah Jessica Parker on a floating... Wait, no, she was on the dog, and Pierce Brosnan was the floating head, right?
No, I think it was the head on her... Right? It was the head on her body?
At the very end, it ended up with one of them was just like a floating head,
oh,
and
that's
one
right.
was sewed onto her chihuahua, I think.
Yeah.
That scene always stuck with me. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's a scene that terrified me.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Nah, this movie's not for me.
And speaking of, oh my God, every time I talk about Tim Burton, it's movies that terrified me. Sleepy freaking Hollow.
I saw this so many times in theaters. This was my favorite movie for a while.
Talk to me about it.
This is another like Johnny Depp performance that's like, he is so perfect in this as Ichabod Crane. It's like it's another one where you can see Tim Burton putting himself in this character, but it's like a reversal from what we usually get, where it's like the weird outsider fitting into a normal society. Here, like Ichabod Crane is the level-headed one who's like going into this weird world. So it's a cool like flip of his usual formula.
Yeah, right. I think it embraces a lot of like the Hammer horror that we kind of talked about earlier. A lot of like really like over the top, kind kind of imagery, but almost in a way that is fitting. I mean, I feel like it fits in. It does the time period thing where.
I was gonna say, is this his first period piece, or am I tripping?
No, I mean it was a period piece.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean in terms of like this far back in time, and it kind of embraces. I mean, Sleepy Hollow obviously is coming from like that Victorian, like 18th, 19th century stuff. Mm-hmm. It kind of takes a lot of that Gothic imagery,
literally Gothic.
And repurposes it into a movie that is kind of, I feel like it's almost halfway between a blockbuster and halfway between a Tim Burton art film, It kind of does have those, like, real, like,
there's big action scenes. It's one of his bloodiest movies. It's a real horror. Like, if you got scared by it, I'm sure that, like, the scene where he goes to see the witch and she, like, pops forward, that must have, like, scared the crap out of you.
Jesus, man. Yeah. Tim Burton's hurting my soul.
Yeah, I haven't watched this movie in ages, though.
It's been a minute for me as well, but I can never remember the imagery of a headless horseman chasing down a guy and just trying to cut off his head. I was like, no!
And it's Christopher Walken as the head, like, with the filed down teeth.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying to me. And before we move on to Tim Burton's 2000s, which I feel is a different thing, and we can breeze through it. No, I'm kidding. We have to talk about Nightmare Before Christmas, because this is, regardless of the fact that he didn't necessarily direct it. There you go. Visual reference there.
Yeah, I gotta get this out of here, man. Beetlejuice is really fucking in my eyeline,
This is... would you say it's his most iconic or most memorable movie, even if, he didn't necessarily direct it? He produced it, right?
Yeah, he produced it.
He wrote it as well?
Concept.
He wrote the, like, a poem that they, like, ended up... But then he also, like, drew all the characters.
I mean, it's very... Even though he didn't direct it, it's very much a Tim Burton inspired.
And they still... Don't they do it at the Hollywood Bowl, too, with the score?
Yeah. I've never made it there. I always want to. But, yeah... Like, so Henry Selick directed it, and when you look at his work, like, he's very much in that same, like, style. It was a really good mesh. Like, if you watch James and the Giant Peach, Jack Skellington's even in that one, and, like, Coraline, and he's got that same aesthetic. Right. So, even though Tim Burton didn't direct it, it's got his stamp on it. So
sure.
Right.
And it's that iconic stop motion animation that is a hybrid between entertainment for children, artistic vision, and still having that creepy imagery that he always puts in his movies.
Though I will say, I watched this recently in my animation class, because I'm in animation classes like focused on Pixar and shit like that. And honestly, this movie is like way more adult than I remembered it. Like that opening scene, I mean, they're straight like, I mean, they're not talking about sex, but they're hinting at it like a whole lot. Like,
and the wave of my hand and a well-placed moan, I have swept the very bravest off her feet.
Right, exactly. So it's just like I love it. I love that as like that. Honestly, I can't imagine how the '90s were. Maybe Nirvana was so big or whatever. But can you imagine kids?
That was the '90s.
Yeah, it was that '90s. I can't imagine kids seeing this in theaters. Like that movie looks. This movie. I mean, just the character design. I
saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I mean the character design looks so like horrifying. Like it's crazy that they market this as a kids movie almost. But I love it. I think it's genius that they did. And I think it's genius that it kind of influenced that kids got to see this movie and it got to have as wide of a cultural impact as it did.
Do you remember watching this movie for the first time?
It's another one that I don't remember watching for the first time. I remember getting the VHS and being super excited that I could watch it whenever I wanted. I mean, this is one of the most defining movies of my life. I got my
no way! What?
I love this movie.
Full-blown tattoo.
I love this movie.
Yeah.
Wow. Nightmare Before Christmas tattoo. Obviously, when everyone talks about this movie, it's a holiday movie.
Whether it's Christmas or Halloween, you could...
I was going to say, what is it? Is it a Halloween movie or is it a Christmas movie? We got to do it, man.
I think it's more of a Halloween movie, personally.
Okay.
I think it's both, because then you can watch it on both.
Yeah, I would say it's both. I do think it's both. Yeah,
I feel like if you watch it on Halloween, you're like looking forward to Christmas. You're like, man, I can't wait for Christmas.
I mean, most of the movie takes place during Christmas.
Yeah. So I mean, I think on the technical level it's a Christmas, but I feel like just from a watching perspective, I feel like watching. I wouldn't watch it. I wouldn't put this on Christmas personally in my household. You know,
I would.
Whereas on Halloween, it would definitely be on. You know,
That's crazy. I'm still trying to recover from the fact that you literally have the Nightmare Before Christmas tattoo on your
love
arm.
that.
That's crazy.
This and Edward Scissorhands are the two like most defining pieces of art in my life.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love
Growing
that.
up.
Do you would you okay? So out of all like the Disney animated films, including Pixar as well to some extent, do you think this is the one that probably is one of your favorites or like the top or?
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of weird. I've never thought about it in the category of like Pixar as well. It's because that stop motion is so unique.
Yeah,
it's
so
like
different.
even hard to think of it in that same category. You know.
I think what's interesting about stop motion animation too, and since you're taking that animation class, I kind of want to ask you is that the stop motion animation already, like even if it's just a standalone story of having no real story, it's already just the animation itself is already kind of creepy, for lack of a better word. Just the animation style is kind of eerie, and it makes you feel like, oh, because you can see the texture and you can see that it's real, and yet it's animated. It's an animation.
It's like it's a living toy. It's a doll, you know.
Yeah.
So it makes you already feel kind of uneasy, and Tim Burton can just capitalize on that by creating even more bizarre characters and whimsical stories within it. But yeah, I mean, obviously, the two main characters have become iconic within itself. You could see them hanging on the store of Hot Topic. Walk in, and there it is.
Yeah, Hot Topic would be nowhere today without Nightmare Before Christmas. Like they built their empire off the back of Nightmare Before Christmas.
Are these actual arts that you own?
Oh yeah, I've
great, man.
been meaning to hang them in my office
That's
forever,
awesome.
but I keep forgetting.
How's your place? Is it have anything in there as well?
I've got like a whole like Edward Scissorhands wall.
Nice. Man, we're talking to the real deal, RB3.
Yeah, that's the real deal, man.
That's a
what we
real
have to have
Tim Burton
him on.
fan. Ain't no fake fan here, bro.
Nah, hell nah.
This is awesome, man. I love talking to you about this.
I'm curious about in your animation class. Did you go over Corpse Bride too?
No. Well, we're barely touching like 04, 05 now. So
Gotcha.
Like, but I mean, it's the class itself is about Pixar.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
it's just about like the first like 3 or 4 weeks we're like exploring what Disney was doing before Pixar, you know.
Gotcha.
So we did an entire day on Nightmare Before.
Well, he's on our thumbnail right now. You could see it right behind you.
Oh yeah.
What did you think of this movie, Frank? Did you care
Corpse
for it?
Bride?
Yeah.
I love it because it's beautiful to look at. In terms of the animation, it's like leaps and bounds ahead of like Nightmare Before Christmas in terms of like they were swapping out heads for Nightmare Before Christmas. With Corpse Bride, they like developed these, like when you watch the behind the scenes, like the dolls had gears inside and they'd just stick these like long screwdrivers in to like make you could actually see the mouths like moving in real time. Like the animation's crazy. The story does not have anywhere near the heart that Nightmare Before Christmas does, and that's part of Tim Burton's problem when he's got a blank check and it's like, go make whatever.
Right.
Nightmare Before Christmas, he was working on like this budget and like nobody knew who he was and he's making the stop motion. What the hell are you doing? By the time he's doing Corpse Bride, it's like, okay, go make a stop motion. And the songs, the characters, the heart, none of it's like, you can't fall in love with any of it, you know?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely beautiful. And I mean, I haven't seen this. I've only seen some of this movie. I haven't seen the entire film. But I mean, it's very clear it's going for more of a romantic type. Well, I guess Nightmare Before Christmas is romantic as well. But whereas Nightmare Before Christmas is also a lot about the community of what's the place?
Halloween Town?
Halloween Town, yes. It's about that community. And it's about the characters. This movie is solely focused on like basically these two people, and I mean I guess it's just a little harder because it's just a little harder to connect to it in that way. I guess.
Well, let's keep going. Let's go to Frankenweenie since it's another animated. What do you think about this one, RB3?
I like this movie. I mean, this one I've only seen once. I saw it in theaters, but I really dig it. I mean. It's cool that he got to revisit what originally got him fired in the first place, but he revisited it in a really fun way, and I think that that's a cool. I mean, you know, there wasn't a lot of stop motion animation I don't know if this one's actually fully stop motion. Is it? Yeah. Or I don't know if it's like a mixture anymore. Or,
I'm sure they do
do something like that. Yeah. But I mean, during this time period, I mean, 2012, we're in the height of like Pixar and DreamWorks. So it was kind of cool. This is like a refreshing kind of take. I wasn't really as fully gripped in the story. I'm not a dog person myself.
Oh no way!
Yeah,
breaking my heart, man.
Yeah,
Are you an animal person at all?
No.
Oh my god!
I hate all animals.
Oh my god!
You didn't know this? How long have you guys been doing this
I was gonna say the same thing. How long have we been on this podcast?
And I never talked about animals in a movie before?
I'm the biggest oh yeah, we did have that.
Yeah.
I have a very strong opinions. I'm such an animal rights person.
Yeah.
So
that I will hate movies because they do certain things to animals.
So will you hate Dumbo because it shows somebody being cruel to the elephant?
I mean, it depends how realistic the CG is.
Because you can hate the character for doing that, but you can't hate the movie for showing.
I hated.
No, we did a whole episode on Yorgos Lanthimos, and then like,
and I just could not. I was like, nope.
Yeah, because
I can't forgive him. He kills
the lobster.
He brutally murders animals and all. No, I'm good, bro.
Yeah, dog tooth. He murders a dog.
Yeah, like
and a cat.
Yeah, no.
Let's just
I can't forgive it. I just
can't.
I can't forgive it.
Like there can be a racist character in a movie, but it doesn't mean the movie's racist.
Sure,
you know, you can have a character who's cruel to animals.
There's levels to this game, guys. and I'll tell you, the lobster crossed that level. There's a line, and I'm cool with certain things. I mean, they killed a ton of horses on Game of Thrones, and I'm like, sure. But the way, I don't know. I think he took a little too much joy. And I'm like, nah, man.
So are you big in Frankenweenie then?
Yeah, I actually enjoy this movie. Obviously, it's very typical Tim Burton, over the top. You can see that. And it's very much catered towards children. And I feel like the message that he's trying to say in all his movies directed towards kids comes out quite a bit in this movie, but I enjoyed it, sure, for what it was. I definitely was not a child like RB3 was when he saw it.
I wasn't a child. I was a freshman.
Like 5?
I was a freshman in high school. Freshman in high school.
That's still pretty.
Yeah. No, I'm actually might have been a sophomore. No, I was a freshman. But yeah, no, that's honestly, like, I think that of all of the animated Tim Burton movies, I don't honestly think he has like a fully great one outside of Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, but that's not one he directed, you know?
Sure.
But I mean, it's just fascinating that knowing he studied school to literally be an animator.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
crazy.
That's kind of where his heart's always been, but I think he's so much better in terms of like you said, kind of using the constraints of the real world and incorporating his weirdness into that. I think, not weirdness, but uniqueness into that is what makes him really special.
Speaking of animals, let's do it. 2001, Planet of the Apes.
Oh, man.
We got to talk about it. Mark Wahlberg.
Could we go back to Ed Wood?
We got it. See, this I do remember watching in theaters. I saw it with my brother and my mom. All three of us went to see the movie. And yeah, it's a movie.
I remember liking it a lot when I saw it because I was, what year was it? 2001. I was 12. No. Yeah.
Sure.
All right, I can't do math. I didn't get into this business to do math.
Jesus, Helena Bonham Carter. I forget she's in this too. She's in like all his movies, man.
She was, not anymore.
Yeah, sure.
Wait, what happened? Did they get divorced or something?
They did. They got divorced.
Oh no!
Damn.
I know.
What?
That was like,
So they're like not collaborating anymore? Like
maybe they'll.
When did this happen?
A couple of years ago, I think.
Oh my God!
Frank's bringing the hot scoops, man.
I'm glad you're sitting down.
Yeah,
for this.
I mean, Jesus, I could have a heart attack on air right now.
Yeah,
man.
yeah. They had.
So was
two kids.
She's not in Dark Shadows?
Yeah, she is. I think.
I didn't watch Dark Shadows.
I saw So this is in the period of like.
Yeah.
When I just was not happy with him. Like Dark Shadows, Frankenweenie, I saw once in theaters. I was like, it's fine, but it's like forgettable.
Dark Shadows, yeah.
Did you like Frankenweenie? Man, that's relationship goals for you, man.
Yeah.
That's Tim Burton.
Yeah.
That's now I'm all on the Eva Green train, so you and I are gonna have to.
We got to fight, man.
Yeah.
You can't take it from me.
But did you like Frankenweenie? I guess we never asked you, but
I thought it was the same thing as Corpse Bride, where it's like.
You appreciate it.
Fun to look at, but yeah, it's just kind of.
Yeah. Also, I did love Frankenweenie for the black and white. I did love that.
Yeah. Same like that and Ed Wood.
Yeah, the black and white.
Yeah.
Especially for Ed Wood, since it's doing that genre and doing Ed Wood's films.
Planet of the Apes, guys. Come on.
I
Back on track.
That's what I'm trying to say. I don't want to talk about it. I don't know about Frank.
This is full height of Mark Wahlberg. This is when he's coming into the Wahlberg isms. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Say hi to your mother for me. That Mark Wahlberg is coming into this movie, and the makeup is incredible.
Yeah,
in this movie.
we can
It's
talk about the makeup
absolutely
at least,
incredible.
right? And like be on the same page with that.
Come on, man.
all
Tim
right.
Roth is great.
The original won best makeup at the Oscars in 1968. Famously competed against 2001: Space Odyssey. This movie was not even nominated for any Oscars when it came out. Amazingly enough, for makeup.
I remember this movie cost a lot of money, though, right? It was
it was a big budget,
crazy budget,
big failure.
because of the huge battle at the end. Where
budget
all
was
those
100
extras are in makeup, and it's like freaking 500 extras in makeup.
That's correct because it's not like it's not a CG army fighting each other. It's a bunch of people.
It's a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what stands out the most of this movie, and obviously the incredible ending, RB3, the big twist at the end.
Oh, that is the flip of the original.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah,
It's
with
just-
Abraham Lincoln's a monkey.
Yeah, I don't get it, man. I just don't get it. Why did he have to do that? You know?
Hey, Michael Clark
That's
Duncan is in
insane.
this movie.
Michael Clark
And
Duncan.
this-
salute
He's
him.
great in this movie.
This is also his like biggest movie since Batman.
It is.
You know, so like
yeah.
it's his like foray back into like the big
I
Hollywood
think
studio.
box office wise, it did pretty well, didn't it? I
don't
think
know.
it did well. Stop hating RB3.
What do you want me to say, man?
I saw this in theaters,
Also,
man.
I don't like the image of Abraham Lincoln as a monkey. You know, that's just crazy to me, man. That's crazy. Yeah,
it's pretty goofy.
He could have been a little more, even like culturally. I mean, come on, this the dude freed the slaves. Like he's in a monkey. Like, come on, I could have thought about that.
2001 was a different time.
It
Yeah,
was.
yeah. Let's go back to 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's what I'm talking about. That's my movie.
Hey,
That's what
2001
I'm
was
talking
also
about.
the year of Pearl Harbor, RB3.
Oh yeah, that's
we can
not
talk
a good
about
one
that.
either.
Okay, fine. Let's move on to Big Fish.
Yes, that's a great film.
Big Fish.
His,
we brought
his
the prop.
best movie
Yes.
by far. I think it's his most personal. We can look at Edward Scissorhands and like on the surface that looks like that would be his most personal. He made Big Fish after his father had passed away, and to me, this is the most like heartfelt, emotional movie he did, and it's the best example of mixing his style with something that's like palatable for a normal audience.
The real world.
Yeah, it's
100%.
like Big Fish. You can watch, and like you don't have to be into Tim Burton. You can not like his movies, and you can watch it. But he works his magic in there, just not in this like really loud, black and white stripe everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I obviously we're talking about it, but we have to talk about my boy, Ewan. Ewan is incredible in this movie. He's a beast. I mean, that to me is what stood out the most when I watched this movie is his performance and how much he commits to this role. And it's also him kind of coming into his own because obviously this is following The Phantom Menace. This is following, I think it's following Attack of the Clones as well, where he plays my boy, Obi-Wan. But he's great in this movie. This whole cast is great, man. I mean, it's a very underrated cast considering it's not the usual like Johnny Depp and this, even though Helena's in this movie as well.
Yeah.
So.
But but even here it's like a very restrained, from Helen Bonham. I mean, it's restrained in I think restrained is like a perfect word to describe it because I feel like it's, because it is, like you said, it's whimsical. It is kind of heightened, but the whole film is about a story that the father told his son. So of course, like in telling stories, the whole idea is like everything's supposed to be a little heightened, everything's supposed to be a little exaggerated. And I like that as kind of in a reflexive way, it's kind of the story of storytelling in and of itself and what's real and what's fiction. I mean, we talk about Ed Wood. Ed Wood is not a historical piece in terms of like adapting the man Ed Wood and all the characters around him, but it's an exaggerated, it's a bright, it's a more colorful version of that, and that's why I think really works in this film. I love the scene when Ed like proposes to homegirl and like that giant, was it like roses or sunflowers?
Is it daisies?
Oh, it could be daisies. Yeah, I think it might be daisies.
This is why I can't be in the movie trivia show.
Yeah. I mean neither.
Her favorite flower is Daffodils.
Daffodils,
Favorite
yes.
flower is
Hey.
daffodils.
So,
Yeah, I think
so
that's
he,
the line.
he did the whole like yard full of them. I love that. I think that's great, and I think I think it harkens back to a very like wholesome style, very like very like you said, personal. I think you could very much feel the love that Tim Burton had for his father in this film.
Yeah, I think you nailed it when you said this is the most like Tim Burton puts his heart into it, but it doesn't alienate any audiences
Yeah.
who might be a little bit put off by the weird, whimsical.
You can watch it and not
Yeah.
even know it's a Tim Burton
Absolutely,
movie, you know?
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's
I
like
think-
it's like Forrest Gump, but like not like racist. That was great.
Ooh, hot take, man, hot take.
I actually love Forrest Gump.
You know what I'm thinking too, and this is me just going off a train of thought, is the fact that I forgot Helena also plays Bellatrix in Harry Potter, and I just imagine like the directors just being like, "All right, Helena, playing yourself." She kind of just plays herself in all these
yeah.
movies.
Yeah,
Is,
but
is Forrest Gump more or less racist than Abraham Lincoln is a monkey?
I think it's a little more.
It's
a
more.
little
It's more.
Yeah,
It's
a little
definitely more.
Yeah, but I love it though. I still think. I mean, it's still a classic in my household at least.
Let's move on to Demon Baba Sweeney Todd.
Oh yes,
Demon Baba Sweeney.
I watched that
Todd.
one right before getting here today.
Let's hear it, man. What are your thoughts on this movie? Obviously, this
Mr.
movie.
Todd.
I feel like this movie is just. It's more characters than anything else that people remember from this movie. More or less
The
necessarily than the
songs.
story. The
The
songs too.
songs,
Yeah,
too.
sure. I mean, the fact that it's a musical and it's like a dark horror, gothic musical, and literally almost a gothic musical.
Yeah.
It's what stands out. What are your thoughts, RB3? You just saw this one.
Yeah, I really dig it, man. I think this movie is actually.
It's
one
on
of the
Netflix, right?
It's on Netflix. Yeah, I think it's probably
Shout
one
out
of the
to Netflix.
Yeah, it's probably one of the funnier Tim Burton movies. I feel like in terms of like
Sacha Baron Cohen is hilarious in this movie.
As that Italian dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's great. I think
Bellatrix is in this movie.
yeah, Ellen Bonham Carter. Well, it's all about like Sweeney Todd. He's coming back from being in prison and he wants revenge on the person who put him, the judge who locked him up or whatever. And it's just like a whole thing of like, oh, him getting revenge just ends up him cutting people's throats and and serving them up as pies. I think that whole montage when they're doing that is funny. I like how the first hour of this movie is like you're kind of building into like what's actually going to happen. I'm actually kind of glad I didn't see this movie when it came out because I wonder how they would have marketed it. I wonder if they put in the trailers that he was killing people and like chopping them up or whatever.
So they actually had like when this movie came out, they released a bunch of footage on their website, and it was cut your own trailer. There was a contest for like cut
really?
your own trailer to Sweeney Todd, and you're like, I just remember that because you brought that up. But I mean, I think
Did you participate?
no,
okay.
I want to, but you had to like use their like editor. On their website, it was like a drag this. It wasn't like it was just like to get people excited about the movie. But
Right.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Nah, but what do you think of this movie, Frank? Like,
I didn't like it when I saw it in theaters the first time, and then it was, and I think it might be because like I couldn't understand the words in the theater, like the singing something about that. But like watching it at home later, I ended up coming to love this movie. I will always fast forward through that Green Finch and Linen Bird song. Like that's the most like the Green Finch. Like
yeah.
I was gonna. That's
hate
another.
that scene.
That's a follow up to you guys. What do you guys think of the music in this? Since it is a musical.
Yeah, it's based on this Stephen Sondheim, play, I guess, or musical. His musicals are very famous for having like more lyrics than actual, words. I guess very very much like a sung through type thing. I think it works. I usually hate when movies do like the most. I mean, not musicals, but I love musicals. I hate when it's like the whole movie is like singing almost.
Sure.
I fucking hate Les Mis. I hate that movie
What?
with a burning passion.
I'm with you.
I just don't think it's a good movie at all. But that's a movie where it's like everybody's singing and nobody's really doing it well, and it's like. But this movie at least is fun. Like at least it comes with like really funny like cheesy.
By the
singing.
Sea, Mr. Todd. That whole song. Is,
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like you bring up Les Mis. Their big like selling point with that movie was like all the actors sung their own things like live on set. Like they were doing that with Sweeney Todd with like Johnny Depp is singing, and Johnny Depp isn't like an amazing singer.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it works. You know, he's playing that character.
Well, it's admirable because it's not like you said, it's like Johnny Depp's not a great singer, but he almost has that like old like 70s like Rolling Stone, Mick Jagger kind of like when he hits those notes, he's just kind of like more growling more than singing. But it fits his character so perfectly that it's like I love it. I also think the violence in this movie is really great. Like the way they cut whenever they have the throat cuts and there's like just that blood just like draining like out of it like immediately, I think is great.
Yeah. Shout out to Arya Stark. Hey, Game of Thrones reference.
Oh,
no
shit.
one? Cool.
Never seen Game of Thrones.
Let's go, Frank. Let's go. I'm not alone in this world.
Damn it, man. She was inspired by Sweeney Todd. Let's just say that.
Okay.
She does things that Sweeney Todd does.
Would you eat a meat pie from Mrs. Levitt's meat shop?
Absolutely not.
No?
But basically what I'm spoiling in Game of Thrones is that. She does that, she cuts throats, and it's very Sweeney Todd.
Does she grind them up and feed them to people?
Well, they don't, but they don't show it, but yeah.
But I will say it's great, though.
And she cuts the throats and everything. It's Sweeney Todd.
With the price of meat, what it is, when you get it, good you got it. Didn't you just watch this? What's the next line? Come on.
I'm not
Mrs.
that good.
Moody
I'm
had
not
a
that good.
pie shop. Business ever better serving pussycats and toast?
I gotta ask.
Pussycats and toast, yeah.
What's your
goes for maybe 6 or 7 at the most. Never doing my shop. All right.
I love it.
What's your favorite song? What's your favorite song from this?
When the first time that Judge Turpin, is that his name?
Turpin, yeah.
Comes in for the shave and like when Sweeney Todd
He's
almost
like,
gets him and then he
so
gets like
close.
interrupted.
Yeah.
Whenever my roommate shaves, he always sings that song. And so like,
Be pretty women. Yeah, pretty woman. Yeah,
pretty women.
Yeah, so good.
Right in.
Yeah.
Alan Rickman, R.I.P. Great in this film.
Oh my God, Alan Rickman, 100%.
What's your favorite song?
I feel like people look back on this movie and they look back on it with a lot of obviously I don't want to say nostalgia, but they like I think your point of view is what a lot of people felt, is what they were like, oh, this wasn't great, and then they go back and they're just like singing along and they're like, you know what, I think it's,
you have to be able to like sing with it. When you're in the theater, you like it's weird.
Like,
you gotta be quiet and.
Let's move on to...
Well, I do want to say one thing before we go.
Quit trying to rush the man.
Yeah, let me just get one thing. I think, when we talk about the meaning of, I think this one actually does have a little bit of a social commentary in it.
Ooh.
And the fact that it's all about people who are so poor, there's no meat, and like they're literally eating themselves. Like, it's like the capitalism.
And it's a little racist, too.
Yeah. Is it? There was racist stuff in that movie. I might have missed it.
Remember the black character in the movie?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, you're right.
There are none.
Yeah, you're right.
Everyone's really pale.
Right. No,
what are y'all trying to say?
Yeah.
Pale. I think everyone in Tim Burton
movies are all pale. I'm not
like
gonna count that against.
White.
Yeah, it's like he goes out of his way to
Tim
make sure
Burton's like, yo,
his brothers in this movie.
I can't. Yeah, you got to make them whiter. You got to put that white makeup on their face.
Yeah. Even the black dudes are like, powder them up a little bit.
Yeah,
there's no black people in this movie. You're right. But hey, man, at least I didn't have to see no black dudes get their throats cut. Yeah, either.
There you go.
How many of his movies have black people?
I don't think any of them.
I think we might be talking Planet of the Apes.
Just Planet of the Apes? Whoa.
I really do feel like there's something there, man.
Maybe an extra or two, or in Big Eyes.
The doctor in Big Fish.
Yes. Yeah. You're right.
He's not racist.
He's not racist.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
There you go.
He concludes. Obviously, I'm skipping Alice in Wonderland because
we talked about it.
Big Eyes, and the last one he did besides Dumbo is Miss Peregrine's, which was another one that kind of got mixed reactions. But these are two movies that have mixed reactions, to say the least, but these are his two last recent movies.
I think Big Eyes is like considerably better than Miss Peregrine.
Really?
I think.
You think so?
I mean, I haven't seen Miss Peregrine.
Maybe it's just because I'm blinded by Eva Green.
No, I don't. I
forgot what the movie was about.
I haven't seen Miss Peregrine, so I don't know.
Okay, there you go.
So I will say Miss Peregrine is the one Tim Burton film I haven't seen.
Interesting. Jesus Christ! I think I'm the only one who's seen it.
I rented it last night. I wanted to watch it before we did this, and I only got like through the first 15 minutes. I didn't have time. Yeah. But yeah, this was like during a period when I had no interest in seeing his stuff.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah, Big Eyes, like it was good, but it just seemed like this weird like what are you doing now? Like,
Sure.
why are you making this?
Yeah.
I didn't feel like he had any connection to it.
Yeah. No, I totally feel that. I mean, Big Eyes, like, I felt like the subject material was so perfect for Tim Burton. The idea of like an artist who makes these very expressionist inspired paintings. A lot of the paintings that I feel like inspire the films that he's inspired by, you know?
It's also about like creativity and taking the rights from your creativeness.
Yeah. So I feel like it could have
like a story of him and Disney,
Right.
but like I didn't feel that connection there.
No, I feel like I think at that point he was already Disney's, you know?
Which is why, I'd be curious to, like, after you guys see Dumbo, if you can stomach the animal cruelty in it. To me, it seems like he is kind of taking a shot at Disney. They're like, without spoiling it for you guys, like Michael Keaton runs a theme park that is essential. It looks like Disneyland.
Yeah.
Sure.
He's kind of the like everything seems great when you sign on to be part of this guy's theme park, and then once you get there, you realize like, oh, this isn't what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so kind of like Tim Burton, I felt like he was like putting a message out there of like,
Interesting.
he sold his soul to Disney, and now maybe he's kind of like,
Yeah, I love that.
That's cool. Like putting like an anti-Disney message inside a Disney movie.
Yeah,
That's epic,
I wonder
bro.
how Disney was okay with that.
That's like a
how did you get away with that shit?
slam dunk right there. I mean, this basically concludes it. Thank you so much, Frank, for coming on and talk about Tim Burton.
Did we discover what the meaning of was?
I mean,
I think we got
we did.
Yeah.
The meaning is Frank.
Yeah.
Watch enough Tim Burton movies and you become Frank.
Now, before we leave, I do want to wrap up this Tim Burton racist conversation by asking. I don't know if you've seen the original Dumbo, but there's an incredibly racist song in that movie.
We work all day, we work all night, we never learn to read or write. We're happy-hearted roustabouts.
Does it make a comeback?
No, all right,
the
good.
crows aren't in it. The song, like
Can you imagine if he did that? Bro? Oh my god!
If you listen to that original Dumbo song.
I was waiting for them to put like some kind of like thing in it where like you see a crow and then like it gets like squashed or like they're somebody's like, oh no like for them to almost like but like they didn't go anywhere near that. That's like
got it.
Wow. So we can conclude that Tim Burton is not racist,
because
he didn't put that
There you
scene
go.
in.
We did it.
We got it.
What we got to do, RB3, is actually go watch Dumbo.
Yeah,
I think that's
It's playing up the street. You guys can go right now.
It's the
AMC
biggest
A-list.
takeaway from this podcast.
My A-list has been broken
Go
all
watch it.
morning, man. I was trying to get those Avengers tickets.
Dumbo was my first A-list movie. I just signed up for the A-list.
There you go.
That's what's up.
Hey, good deal, man. I'm actually going to check it out now just because of your recommendation.
I liked it.
There we
That's
go.
what's up.
I loved it.
Good deal. Thank you so much,
Thanks
Frank,
for having
coming
me,
on.
guys.
Where can the good people find you online?
I'm around.
Frank
Frank the editor.
Frank the editor on Twitter, man.
Thanks
Hey.
for the follow back.
Hey!
Hey.
Did
I
you
didn't
follow
realize-
RB3?
Oh wait, I was already following you.
No, you were not following me. Frank, I'm not gonna lie to you,
got
man. I'm a social media
controversy.
stalker.
Oh, okay.
Controversy.
I'm a social media stalker, bro. I literally know exactly who's following me.
follows you?
Well, then
Yeah.
let me take the time
Yeah.
to publicly apologize.
No need to apologize, Frank. I was like, yo, if I get a follow back from Frank, that would be the biggest
Maybe I just
honor.
assumed that I was already following you because
Hey.
I don't know why. In my defense, Christian set up my Twitter.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
got it.
he started my initial follow.
Yeah, he doesn't like me anymore. So.
Oh, there we go. Well, it's mutual.
Yeah.
Either way,
No, speak for yourself, man. Speak for yourself.
I was gonna say, didn't he name your Twitter too?
Originally, yeah,
Schmoes,
RB3
yeah, that was
Schmoes was my original
Christian,
Twitter,
man. Christian's
I
been
changed
taking
it.
everyone's Twitters.
I changed
Changed
it.
you guys' come on now.
Yeah.
Either way, mega Tim Burton fan Frank, thank you so much. Honestly, I'm still amazed by your fandom. Like I'm a nerd and I'm a fan of a lot of things. I wear like my nerdy T-shirts of like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff like that. But man, your fandom is next level, bro. I love it.
It's
beautiful.
Yeah, he's been the most like constant source of inspiration.
Amazing.
in my life.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, guys. For the Meaning of Podcast, I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out. Peace out, guys.